The first social worker told us that my son would not be vaccinated, that they would respect our religious views on it. When they decide to vaccinate my son, 5 shots, 2 in the arm, 3 in the legs, all at one go, the constitutional rights in the States, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada, is just to protect human beings from abuse. We're trying to fight for freedom, for rights again, because as people bully us, if we don't say anything, the bullies are just going to get away with their crimes.
Is parental rights really a thing in Canada anymore? You might not know the answer to that question until you're faced with a parental rights battle yourself. And today, I bring you a report about a family that's going through just that. Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, standing right across from BC Children's Hospital. I'm about to bring you an interview with 2 distraught parents who are at their wits' end as they fight to regain custody of their sick child without losing the fight to be advocates for what they think is the best medical treatments and interventions for them. Now, other outlets who have covered the story may be taking a different approach, but Rebel News has made the decision to not contribute to anything that might keep these parents away from their 4th and youngest child any longer than it needs to be. The parents have been slapped with restrictions from the ministry that prohibit them from doing things like posting information about the child on their social media. Now, again, that's different than a news report, but we're taking extra precautions to keep the baby's identity safe as he is under the care of the state. So for that reason, we will not be disclosing the parent's name, showing their faces, or disclosing the baby's face or name as well. Now, their child has a very rare disease called Bactral. It's basically an abbreviation for a series of anomalies that can impact one's limbs, the digestive system, the heart, the lungs, and more. And basically, just after being born in the Okanagan, the baby was flown out to BC Children's, where the child has received care since and received close to 6 different surgeries. Some of the surgeries the parents agreed to, but the parents say there were some that were optional that they did not agree to. And that was the beginning of their legal fight. According to the parents, when they went to go file for an injunction to stop an optional tracheotomy, a hole being put in their child, they learned that they had lost temporary custody, and it actually skyrocketed from there. They have no decision-making rights and no custody as it stands right now. Now, you're about to hear their story that they are desperate to get out, so please watch to the end. But you should know I reached out to BC Children's as well as the Ministry of Children and Family Development to get their side of the story, which of course is an important step in journalism. And although I did not hear back from the ministry, I do know that they typically take the same stance. They're not able to comment on private matters. So I assume that's what's happened here. But for now, here is the parents' side of the story.
So right after he was born, they had suction, they had oxygen, and they were able to keep him alive. And he was flown from the Vernon Hospital to BC Children's Hospital. And on Easter Sunday, he had his surgery to fix his TEF, which is a tracheoesophageal fistula. He did really well right after that. He also had a few abnormalities. He has something called Vactral, which is an acronym. So he does have some vertebral abnormalities, and he's missing his thumb and his ulna. He also has a cardiac condition where his heart has a double outlet left ventricle. And just a few little things, but he's been thriving. He's happy. He likes to sit up on his own now, and he plays his piano. He's super attentive.
Now, I can see some of it. We can't show the camera this, but there is so much evidence of what you just said, just happiness in your child. And certainly he looks like such a fighter. This is a scrapbook put together by you guys, and I'm sorry I can't share the details on it, but right now you don't have decision-making rights and you don't have custody of your child. Let's talk about when you first received a threat about that happening.
The first threat was actually when he had an aortoplexy done, and that surgery went really sour. When they closed him up, a week later, his sternum burst, pus was everywhere, cardiac arrest, they had to intubate him. So he was on coloxocillin, a really strong antibiotic to treat that staph infection. 6 weeks. And right after that, he was on some more antibiotics. I told the doctor that, we've had 2 days since the clear blood checkout, the blood workup, and I think it's enough antibiotics. Let him sleep. It's so important to have sleep. Like, I saw him the previous day. The blood was taken from him. He cried so much, and they couldn't really find the line. And even before that, they had to use ultrasound. Just said, you use morphine, you use all these sedatives, and you say it's so important for kids to rest and to sleep. And I said, let's just stop it. And the doctor got really annoyed, and she looked at me and she said, if you don't follow medical professional advice, we're going to get the ministry involved.
Now, so that was when you first had the warning, but again, I stress now you have lost custody. So, what were the events that led up to actually the ministry being involved and you guys losing your parental rights?
It started when I started to do research on some of his sedatives. After the aortoplexy, I found out he was on 2 sedatives, clonidine and lorazepam. And as I researched about lorazepam, I found out that it actually can cause respiratory issues because my son was on a BiPAP. And because of that, he has to have a mask, and they were recommending a tracheostomy. And he used to breathe on his own just fine. But once he got COVID, pressures were raised, and it wasn't really lowered much. So when we requested that lorazepam was weaned, they weaned him at a really fast rate, but they warned us that he might get seizures. So 3 days after they weaned him, he developed 12 seizures, and from midnight till 10 a.m. But these seizures, they were interesting. He would just sort of stare blankly. He'd sort of hold his breath a bit, and he wouldn't shake. And so I did more research, and I found out that if it's just seizures but without a fever and a rash, it's very unlikely it's meningitis antibiotics. And the doctors actually started him on meningitis meds, and I said, I'm pretty sure the elephant in the room is dependency on these benzo drugs. I do understand meningitis is really dangerous. I know some friends where their children have died, but in PubMed, it says that if there's no fever, no rash, it's extremely unlikely and rare that it is meningitis. And this was out of I think over 500-600 cases. So because of me refusing the meningitis meds, I had to sign paperwork. They wanted to do a lumbar puncture, and in the morning rounds, another doctor said, well, because his spine is a bit lower, it's a bit complicated, it's actually not really needed. So they said, let's continue with the antibiotics. And I said to them, I'll take full liability. I'll sign the paperwork. It's not meningitis. I signed the paperwork, and a week later, I asked the doctors, did he have meningitis? And the doctors told me, no, he does not. And I asked, did I make the right call? And she said, yes, you did make the right call. But somebody called MCFD saying I risked my son's life by refusing the meningitis medications. And that's how the can of worms opened up. And they were just looking for anything to get me out of the picture as parents, because I have a little bit of a medical background. I used to be in the military as a medic. I did my QL3s in Borden, Ontario. We learned how to do triage and how to treat soldiers, and we learned IVs and first aid. So I'm more of a person who prefers to boost the immune system and have as little meds as possible. The first social worker told us that my son would not be vaccinated, that they would respect our religious views on it. And so when we found out our son is going to go into foster care, the second social worker told us that, we are heavily considering vaccinating your son. And later on, they said, okay, we've given the green light because the doctors are recommending it. And I told them, we spent so much money on the non-GMO soya formula, on Nourish. We don't want any animal products and any viruses or bacteria going into his blood. We believe in boosting the immune system naturally. And when they decide to vaccinate my son, 5 shots, 2 in the arm, 3 in the legs, all at one go, even with our protests.
And so you mentioned having some medical background, because I'm sure some watching were probably thinking, who are you guys to challenge the medical professionals? That might be one of your answers, Dad. But Mom, what would be your answer to people who have that concern when they hear your story? They're feeling for you, but they're thinking, maybe you guys should leave it up to the professionals.
We have been with my son since he was born. We have been always by his side. We know what he's going through, when he's happy, when he's sad, when he's crying, what really helped him, what didn't really help him. But with the doctors, they're always changing. They're going rounds and rounds. The new team is coming, and they just give reports to next team and next team. And every team said, this is our decisions, and that's how it should be. Even though they almost sometimes don't even come and see him face to face.
Now, you guys tried to turn to a legal avenue to fight for not having the tracheotomy. You were told that there were options, and you thought, I don't want a hole in my baby if there's no other options. Tell us a little bit about the other treatment that you were interested in having happen, and also what happened when you tried to get an interim injunction for that to stop.
We at first did a bit of hydrotherapy on my son. We used herbs and Epsom salt and nice warm baths, and we even tried some ice rubs on him, just with a cloth and ice water. And it just improves circulation, stimulates the immune system and the growth hormones and the stem cells. And so February 15th, he was able to come off his mask for 15 minutes after his bath. And even before that, he was able to come off his mask after his bath. And we have pictures of him and videos of him. And he's laughing, he's breathing. He's not breathing hard. And we've always asked doctors, can we have more mask off time? Like, we really know our son is getting strong. And after his bath, those are the best times to do it. But for some reason, the staff, they didn't consent to that. They just said, oh, we did the CT scan and the bronchoscopy, and it just confirms that this is going to take 1 year or 2 years for him to finally get better. And it's not happening. So he needs a tracheostomy. And so I did research online, and in the States, they have a procedure called a tracheoplexy, where they actually move the esophagus out to the side, and then it's like a sticky pad that sticks to the trachea and pulls it back, and it's sutured back to the spinal column. And it actually keeps the trachea from collapsing when he exhales. And there's videos of Johns Hopkins Hospital in Florida and also in Boston Hospital, where 2 doctors are renowned for doing this. So I talked to the surgeon here at BC Children's about this procedure, and he said, wow, I've never heard of this before. I've never done any research. And I said, well, I can schedule a Zoom meeting with you because I have contact now of the doctor, and they're able to talk to the surgeons and try to even transfer us over from Canada to the US.
That didn't happen, obviously. Your child is not in your care. The tracheotomy has been performed. And now there are some crazy restrictions, heavy restrictions, over and above you not having decision-making rights. You're also limited on when and how you can see your child and who you can see your child with. Can you explain some of those restrictions?
They said that I'm not allowed to post anything on social media, anything regarding my son, or else my supervised visits would be suspended. And they have a supervisor that comes, and for 2 hours they have to come and supervise me to see my son, and that's 2 times a week. At first it started 2 times a week, but just a month ago, they stopped my visits completely just because I posted something on Facebook how I was just unhappy with them overfeeding my son, and they wanted to do a GJ2 procedure, which bypasses the stomach and feeds the food into the intestines. And I said, show me one normal baby that goes on this schedule. This is ridiculous. But they said, nope, the team has decided that this is the schedule, and we're going to do a GJ2 procedure because we have full control, and MCFD has given us the authority. So I haven't seen my son for a whole 3 or 4 weeks right now. They stopped my visits, and tomorrow I get to see him for 1.5 hours. They cut my visits now to 1 day a week, And it just doesn't make any sense.
So, with all of these challenges, when is it likely that you'll get your child back? My understanding is they're currently looking for a foster home for your child near where you live in the Okanagan.
Just unbelievable even to think about it. And I said, it's just not possible. We have been with him all the time. He knows us. When he hears us, he's laughing and smiling. And when I put him into bed, after I cuddle him, he doesn't want to go back. He just wants to be cuddled. He knows my touch. He knows my voice so well. And when I even think about it, that he has to go to somewhere else where he doesn't know anyone, and I don't even know how often I can see him.
My first lawyer, he recommended me to consent to the interim custody order so that we can move to the protection hearing. That's where we actually can stand a chance to give evidence and win the case. Because if we don't consent, then it goes to a presentation hearing. And he said it's almost impossible to win that. When we made the plea that we are not consenting, I remember the social worker just put her face in her hands, because that actually gives us still rights as parents to make medical decisions. But the thing is, after that court date, I got an email from my lawyer, and my lawyer told me 3 weeks after that the court date for the presentation hearing is going to be 3 months down the line, and we should just consent to the interim custody order. Then we can move to the protection hearing. I was a bit impatient. I'm like, okay, whatever, let's just consent and let's move on. After we consented, we lost all rights to our son, and he never told us that. He actually tried to go to the provincial court and later on Supreme Court to do stop injunctions and try to get our rights back as parents to make medical decisions, but he wasn't able to do it. And then now we're getting the news that the protection hearing, we had one actually to start it off end of March, 31st of March. And now they're sending me emails that they want to do a 6-day hearing, and it's pushed back all the way till January. And that's when we can actually show evidence and show that we are in the right, that we're not presumed guilty. And now MCFD, they are supposed to protect families. But what are they doing? They're separating my family. They're creating all this stress. They're creating division, saying my wife didn't report my Facebook post, and because of that, she cannot control me. And because of that, he has to go into foster care. The constitutional rights in the States, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada, is just to protect human beings from abuse. We're trying to fight for freedom, for rights again, because as people bully us, if we don't say anything, the bullies are just going to get away with their crimes.
If you appreciate that Rebel News took the time to sit with these parents and let you hear their story, then consider supporting our independent journalism that doesn't take a penny from the federal government like over 90% of news outlets in Canada. We completely rely on you, and a fun way you can support us is go to rebelnewsstore.com and treat yourself to some Rebel gear or someone else you love. And when you're there, you can use coupon code DREA10 to save. Again, that's rebelnewsstore.com. We appreciate your support.